So much ground to cover on Steelers Falcons. And on Fridays at 8, we're going to be talking to Chris Carter of the Post-Gazette. He'll help us break it down. He's on the Fan Hotline presented by Sullivan Super Service, Pittsburgh trusted plumbing and HVAC provider for over 50 years. And the Fan Morning Show is brought to you by Guardian Protection, your hometown home and business security company. Good morning to you, Mr. Carter. What's up?
Good morning, fellas. How we doing today?
Oh, buddy, we got football.
Ready to roll?
We got football. We're going to get some Pitt stuff from you as well as you cover the Panthers. But, all right, man, best guess on what's going on with the Steelers quarterback situation after Russell Wilson pops up on the injury report yesterday, limited with a calf.
I think that's the thing here is it's about guessing right now because the Steelers are being very tight-lipped. Russell Wilson being a limited participant yesterday in practice, and so now everyone's kind of in the position where they're like, "Is this the same? It's the same calf, so is it going to be the same problem that it was in training camp?" Now there is the belief, there's no evidence to this, but there is a belief, but among several of us, that the Steelers intentionally kind of held back Russell Wilson during training camp so that they could get more looks at Justin Fields. Russell Wilson even said himself that if it was a game back when he was training camp and he wasn't practicing, he would be ready to go. Now's the chance to prove that he wasn't lying and that the Steelers were just holding him out so that they could get a better look at Justin Fields. But all eyes are going to be on today. If he's a full participant or a limited participant, that could, if he's a full participant, to me, that could end all this right now. Like, okay, he's starting, no questions about it. But if he's limited or he doesn't practice, look out for Justin Fields being the Steelers' Week 1 starter, something that a lot of us didn't think would happen because they just thought Russell Wilson would be ready to go. I think it's going to lean towards Russell Wilson still being that guy. But the big question, too, guys, is, Russell Wilson, they've said, like, oh, he can be ready. He's a professional. He knows how to do that. I do think if you think Justin Fields has to start in this game, you got to get him mentally ready. You need as many days as possible to be like, hey, you are the number one. Be ready to run the offense as if it's yours because it is yours now. And I think the Steelers, they're going to want to find that out pretty soon.
Chris, if it is Justin Fields, one, how will it look? How will he do? And two, if he does play well, what do you do in week 2?
That's a great question, man. And because here's the thing: if Justin Fields goes out there and lights it up and plays within the system, because to me that's the biggest thing that they're entrusting Russell Wilson to do is, hey, we know that if we give you a system, you've studied it, you're going to go out there and execute. You're going to protect the football. You're going to take the calculated shots and not lose the game for the offense, but also not completely ball it up and keep it from scoring any points. If Justin Fields can do that while also showing off his arm strength and his athleticism to create more plays with his legs to get yards in the ground, that will close the gap even further than he's already closed it with the time in training camp. So I think if Justin Fields does start and he does play well, I think it's going to make the question harder. It might be a question of, you know what, Russ, we're going to wait till you're 100% because we do want to see what Justin Fields has in their favor, because I do think that there's a good chance that the Steelers might like what they see out of the young guy.
Jordan, has that happened before? We've had a guest burp? I don't think so.
No, it's like clear your throat and get like this, but not.
Yeah,
like,
pardon me. That was
that'll happen. We've had sneezes before. We've had some coughs before. Never before a burp.
Mid-take.
Now I have burped mid-take, and a lot of people would prefer that to my takes. It is, what time is it, Doran?
8:06.
Means it's time to get to Tom Fridays, buddy, for juicy steaks, meats, and more. I'm sure that wouldn't cause any flatulence or things of that nature. All right, Mr. Carter. Troy Fautanu, it looks like he's going to play, and he's going to get a hat. And they need him to because they are desperately thin at tackle. Will there be a chance that we see him play even if he's not a tackle, i.e., could they use him as a tight end, especially with yesterday, under the radar, Darnell Washington pops up on the injury report with a knee?
They could throw him in there as an extra lineman. I haven't seen them do that too much just yet. I think they're going to ask Troy Fautanu to do the thing that they've worked on him with, and that's to be the team's right tackle. But I don't think that's going to supplant Broderick Jones. If he goes in, I think it's because Broderick Jones or Dan Moore get hurt in this game, and they have to further shuffle the offensive line. Now, Broderick Jones isn't being limited to right. He's still at this where he's starting, but they're still working on him to play left. That's where I think that if Troy Fautanu plays, it's because they're moving moving Broderick to left either for a Dan Moore injury or because things they feel like, hey, things aren't working, let's jumble this up now. But I think they're going to let Fautanu kind of rest this week, because let this week be the week that he gets his feet under him, and then they'll assess things next week. Okay, how did Broderick Jones do? How did Dan Moore Jr. do? All right, how is Troy looking in practice? Then they'll reassess this. But I think this will be a weekly thing until it's done and settled that Fautanu and Jones are your starting tackles for the Steelers. They're going to be evaluating these guys every single week because they want them to be the future, but they also acknowledge Dan Moore Jr. actually had a pretty good preseason, and he hasn't done anything to lose the job so far from camp to now.
Chris, on defense, who do you think we will see more? Peyton Wilson or Nick Herbig?
Peyton Wilson. I gotta say Peyton Wilson, because I think his speed and coverage ability is going to be really useful. Also, we declared a truce, Doran, so don't ever try to get me on the show.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Little inside baseball, inside jokes going on there, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got inside jokes. But Peyton Wilson, I think, because especially the things that this offense can do, you got Kyle Pitts, you got Bijan Robinson, you want his speed on the field. You want his coverage ability. Now, their snap counts will be really close, because I think Nick Herbig's earned the shot to get on the field a lot as an edge rusher. But I think with the capabilities that Peyton Wilson brings to the defense, you're going to see him, especially on like second and longs and third downs. They'll throw him out there and they'll say, hey, run with Bijan Robinson wherever he goes if it's a pass play. Run with Kyle Pitts up the seam. Helping zone coverage over the middle. Use your length to kind of shorten those passing windows if Kirk Cousins is trying to throw over you. That's where I think that Peyton Wilson will be really useful in this game. But don't be mistaken. That's not any slight on Nick Herbig. He's still also going to get plenty of looks.
All right, Chris, flipping it over to UC versus the Pittsburgh Panthers. You got a good feel on this one?
I do. I feel like Pitt has very much a sense of what Cincinnati wants to do again this year. I was talking to Pat Narduzzi. He talks about how, like, hey, the Bearcats, they love to drop 8 in coverage, rush 3, leave 8 in coverage, and it makes you have to be mindful as a quarterback. But I also think that there is an on-time system that they've developed with Cade Bell's offense that is going to test that this week, and it's going to be interesting to see that. I think that Pitt is in a better situation to take on Cincinnati this year than they were last year at home when they lost to them. I also think that if they're able to simply limit the run game that the Bearcats just bulldozed them with last year, and their star tight end, they have a tight end that's going to be in the NFL next year. But if they're able to do those two things and just not let those guys take over the game, I think this offense, the way that it plays, can take advantage of what the Bearcats do on defense. And I think this will be a shootout. I think that it'll be 30 points on both sides, but I do think that Pitt has a good chance to pull out a win here.
Chris, flipping back to the NFL real quick, last night's game, are those two offenses, is there a huge gap from them and every other offense in the AFC, and especially the Steelers, from what you saw last night?
From every offense in the AFC, no. From the Steelers, I would say there's a considerable gap. I wouldn't call it huge. I would call it a decent gap. I just simply because their quarterbacks know those systems. They're running at things. They got their weapon. Derrick Henry's getting adjusted to the team, but those systems, I think, are designed around those guys for them to run. The Steelers system is not designed for Russell Wilson. It's designed for Russell Wilson to be able to operate within it, but everything about the Chiefs offense is about Patrick Mahomes and letting that guy cook. Everything about the Ravens offense is about Lamar Jackson and letting that guy cook, because those guys are franchise quarterbacks in their primes. Russell Wilson isn't. He's been brought in to manage this offense and to work it. I think that the thing is, the Steelers offense is built around the idea that they are eventually going to develop this brutal ground game. The thing is, they don't have that yet. Now, if they do develop it, we could talk about that in maybe like 2 months, because I think that's going to take about that amount of time to kind of solidify some things. But right now, I don't think, though, because here's the thing. I think the Steelers' defense puts them in a lot more conversations than people realize with some of these other teams. I don't think when people say, oh, wow, look at these offenses, the Steelers are just so far behind them. Look, the last several years, the Steelers have been the 28th or worst ranked offense, and yet they've gone toe to toe with the Ravens every single time, and they've had Lamar Jackson in a lot of those games. I don't think it's this huge gap. I do think those teams are better. That's why I picked the Ravens to be an AFC favorite, and the Chiefs are always an AFC favorite. But I do think the Steelers are a legit contender to be a playoff team. And when they clash with both of those teams this year, I think that those will be really good football games.
Chris, really appreciate the time. As always, man, safe travels this weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, fellas.
Take care.
Thanks, Chris.
Chris Carter of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.